What's going on, everyone? So there's a lot of talk and hype about Ben Simmons this offseason. His trainer, several reports have came out that Ben Simmons is basically back, right? He's back to that all-star level. According to his trainer, he's even better than he was during his all-star seasons, right? His trainer released a report basically saying that, like, hey, I don't just say this for anybody, right? Now, how much of that is, he's just trying to hype up Ben Simmons, but he did put his neck out there on the line. He did put his reputation out on the line. So clearly, he believes in Ben Simmons. Now, big difference between what you see in training and just, open gyms and stuff like that. We actually need to see it in the NBA games at an NBA level, right? Last 3 seasons, Ben Simmons has not been a model of just consistency, health, and can't even just a team player, right? This is a guy that just cannot get out of his own way. It's a guy that just has done everything he can to kind of sabotage his career. And it's disappointing. It's sad to see. I mean, this is a guy that was in conversations for top 10, 15 player in the league. It's a guy that was looked at as a real cornerstone for the Philadelphia 76ers. And there was a point in time where every team in the league would have been stumbling over each other to go get this guy. Talk about a guy that's the size of a center. He's 6'10", 240. That's most of the centers. That's bigger than Victor Wembanyama weighs, right? And then you look at his skill set, his ability to play the point guard, to defend essentially 1 through 5. There's very few guys like Ben Simmons in the league. A guy that can just get the ball off the break and just take off and go. Right, his playmaking ability, his defense ability, obviously the shooting isn't there, and that is a concern. This is a guy that has a ton of talent and could really, in the right situation, on the right team with the right organization, I do think get back to being that all-star level form on top of really making an impact and being a difference maker for the right teams, right? So one of the teams that comes to mind, and some people, I'm sure, are going to freak out. Some people, I'm sure are going to say, you're crazy. But hear me out. Ben Simmons is a bigger, better sort of Draymond Green, Jeremy Sochan type of player, right? And that was what Pop and the Spurs were really trying to do with Sochan. Play him as if he was like a Ben Simmons type. A guy that can slot alongside Victor Wembanyama, that has some size, which Ben Simmons is bigger than, right? They're the same weight, if I'm not mistaken, or close to it, but Ben Simmons is taller and longer. So you get a bigger version, you get that same level of defense, and on top of that, you get the playmaking and all that. Like, that was the whole point, right? To get a guy and plug in a guy that can slot in alongside Victor and really just be that point forward out of the post, make plays, Victor's ability to stretch the floor. Right? Like, Ben Simmons would make all the sense in the world. We saw what Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid were capable of doing together. Right? Imagine what Ben Simmons and Victor Wembanyama could potentially be capable of doing together, especially on the defense side. Could you imagine the defense of those two? Right? And the versatility that those two bring on the defense side. Ben Simmons is also only 28 years old, right? He won't be 29 till July, right? So, I mean, this is a guy that you could have on a new contract. Now, the thing is that would you be willing to actually trade for him is the question, right? This idea is kind of more for next offseason when Ben Simmons is an expiring contract or is a free agent, because he is an expiring contract this season, potentially looking to bring him in. No one's going to give Ben Simmons a max. His days of getting a max contract are over. Even Ben Simmons next season could average 30, 20, and 20, and no one would give him a max contract. Because you can't, right? Like, one, the new CBA makes things very difficult in the contract department, but two, there's the fear at any moment Ben Simmons is just going to say, I don't want to play basketball anymore, and just collect a check, right? So if you're the Spurs, you probably get Ben Simmons for pennies on the dollar, right? And you probably get Ben Simmons especially if he can get back to that all-star level, him alongside Victor Wembanyama makes a ton of sense. Ton of sense. Imagine Philadelphia 76ers. Imagine Philly, Ben Simmons, before the whole, just nonsense, right? Think of the Philadelphia 76ers, Ben Simmons. Imagine if you had that alongside Harrison Barnes, Chris Paul, Devin Vassell, and Victor Wembanyama. You're telling me that's not a team that could genuinely compete with anybody? I'm not talking about the Ben Simmons we've seen the last, 3 years that's only played like 50 games. I'm not talking about the Ben Simmons that's just been an absolute disaster. I'm talking about the Ben Simmons that, before Doc Rivers threw him under the bus and he had a meltdown, right? Like, talking about, like, the Ben Simmons that was all-star, right? Arguably top 10, 15 player in the league, averaging 17, 8, and 8. That Ben Simmons. You give me a 17, 8, and 8 Ben Simmons alongside Victor Wembanyama, alongside Devin Vassell, alongside Harrison Barnes, and I think that would be beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And to have, again, that size with Victor alongside a Ben Simmons. And Ben Simmons' strength and just size to be able to match up. Right? One of the things that I've talked about with the Spurs and my concern with Victor is just how frail he is, right? And do you really want Victor banging with the big boys? The Zach Edey's, the Jokic, right? Like all these guys. Do you really want him on a nightly basis having to go head-to-head, toe-to-toe with these guys, and just all the wear and tear that would put on his body? Right? Like that's not something that I'm sure that you really want to have him have to deal with on 4 times per team, playing these guys like every other day at this point, right? But to have a guy in Ben Simmons that can kind of take some pressure off Wemby and can match up and just use his weight and his size, right? Like, I don't hate it. And then now Wemby gets to be the blindside help. I really do think that it's something that I think you consider. Ben Simmons' mental state, right, and his behavior doesn't really fit the Spurs culture. I'll give you that, right? But his type of game does. Right? Like, Ben Simmons' game, you look at the type of player he is when he's actually focused and motivated, right? Like, his game suits the Spurs beautifully. That pass first, unselfish, would rather make the play than score the ball, right? Rebound, defend, do the dirty work, right? Like, that, like, Ben Simmons has Spurs written all over. He's perfect for the Spurs. He's definitely a pop guy. And you could argue if anyone could get Ben Simmons back to being Ben Simmons, it is Pop, right? Like Greg Popovich, he gets it, right? There's very few guys in the league that know how to manage the egos and the people. Like, if anyone could get Ben Simmons back on track, it is Greg Popovich. And Ben Simmons is that Pop type of player. He's the type of guy that, the type of skill set and the way that he plays, the type of skill set and way he plays that Pop loves. Again, it's what they're trying to turn Jeremy Sochan into. They're trying to turn Sochan into Ben Simmons. Right? Like, they're trying to turn, like, or at least that was the experiment last year, and it just didn't work out the way that they wanted it to. Well, why try to turn Sochan into Ben Simmons when you could just go get Ben Simmons? Especially cheap. Now, if you wanted him this season, like, let's say you wanted to get a look beforehand, like, you could do Keldon Johnson, Zach Collins, and go and trade for Ben Simmons, right? And then that could even potentially be a win-win, right? Because if it works, you just sign him to a new deal. Maybe you do, because I don't know if Ben Simmons would want to do a long-term, $10 million deal. But, like, let's say he's like, do 2 years, $20 million, right? Like, cool, perfect, right? You can do something like that. and it works, it's fine. Because I just don't see anybody paying him 20, 30, 40 million. I don't. Right? So I think, maybe 10 million a year. Right? Maybe the full mid-level exception price. So let's call it 12. Right? Maybe he gets 2 years, 25 million. Right? There you go. Boom. 2 years, 25 million. If it works. If it doesn't work, then he just cleared a bunch more salary, and maybe you can make a big splash. There's a bunch of free agents. Right? Maybe you can make a big move and put yourself in a position to, maybe get a big-time player or two and maybe go try to push for a championship or something. Don't hate the idea. I really don't. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion, and I pass the question on to you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? How do you feel? What are your thoughts? Do you like the idea of Ben Simmons being that kind of, playing that Draymond, type role for the Spurs? The Jeremy Sochan type role for the Spurs? Or do you think, stay as far away from Ben Simmons as possible, too much of a headache, all that stuff? Again, however you feel, whatever your thoughts are, I'd love to hear it. So let me know down in the comments below. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me a lot. Helps me enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one. Thank you.